Irene, you may be seated. So over the last week or so, I've had innumerable conversations with people that sort of went, so how was your Seder? Oh, mine was nice. How many people did you have? And just kind of the banter that catches up after Pesach. And it made me reflect both on things that happened at our Seder and things that didn't. I can tell you that being half asleep for Pesach is generally not a good way to have a good Seder experience. Um, and I have to admit, there are many years when I fall prey to that, most specifically during Birkat Hamazon, during Grace After Meals, which is this, 7 or 8 minutes of sort of continuous singing, but of stuff that we sing, week after week, month after month, and sort of I can go on autopilot. And Jody has sort of almost turned this into a little bit of a game where she'll sort of watch to see at what point my eyes start to fall shut and my head starts to nod downward. Now, I will say that that little power nap makes me good for the rest of the Seder. But there are some years where I disappoint Jody because I don't nod off. And this year was one of those years, in part because we had to be ready for Pesach before Shabbos, and which meant I had all of Shabbat afternoon to snooze. So I was not in need of a nap. And yet, I found myself focused on a verse in Birkat Hamazon that deals with dreaming. It is the first verse of the psalm which introduces Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals. When Adonai restores Zion, we were as dreamers. It is an incredibly powerful verse, but it's complicated as well. The psalmist clearly captures the hopefulness of the exiles dreaming of their return to the land of Israel. But reading the verse on Pesach, couldn't help but see the redemption from Egypt, which is the theme of our Seder, as an infusion into the psalmist and to his listeners, wherein the paradigm of God's redemption in the past served as a reassurance that God would redeem the Jewish people in the future. The verse is also challenging because there's a certain lack of agreement between the verbs that are used in the Hebrew. And so to resolve this tension, Rabbi Robert Gordis suggests that instead of reading the word kechomim, we tweak it a little bit and rearrange the letters so that the root is not to dream, but to heal. And he says we should read the verse, when Adonai restores us to Zion, we are as those who are healed. Read this way, and from our place in history, it emphasizes that the creation of the state was a necessary and essential step in the healing of the Jewish people from the ravages of centuries of abuse, culminating in the horrors of the Shoah, which we commemorated just a few nights ago. This is not in any way to suggest that Israel came into being as a result of the Shoah, for the return to Zion began long before that, as did the rebuilding of the land. Nor does it mean to imply that God permitted the Shoah as a step in bringing about the rebirth of the land of Israel and the state. I think it is meant in the sense that Abraham Joshua Heschel penned in his book, Israel, an Echo of Eternity, where he writes, Israel enables us to bear the agony of Auschwitz without radical despair, to sense a ray of God's radiance in the jungle of history. Simply put, after the Shoah, we needed Israel to help us heal as a people, to renew and continue Jewish life. Israel reborn became a refuge for all Jews who sought one. Jews from all over the globe came together to create a culture that reflected the diversity of the Jewish historical experience in the diaspora. Hebrew language came back to life, and the promises of Torah and the words of the prophets are being increasingly actualized with each passing day. In the land of Israel, the divine covenant with Abraham finds its ultimate expression. A topic of debate amongst us for centuries to come will be whether or not all Jews must or should live in Israel as part of this covenant with God. While that may be a long, debatable question, what is not a debatable question is the responsibility we all have as Jews to participate in the ongoing building and sustaining of our homeland. For centuries, we were the dreamers of whom the psalmist spoke. We Jews dreamt of returning and rebuilding Israel, and that dream sustained us through centuries of diaspora life. Those dreams kept us alive as a people, nourishing and preserving us until we could find a necessary healing in the birth of the State of Israel in 1948. In truth, those dreams still move and inspire us. We still dream of an ideal Israel, a nation at peace and living with security, a society reflective of the highest aspirations and noblest ideals of our tradition, a people and a nation who are truly a light unto the nations. That is the ongoing and continuing dream. Make the dream closer to a reality requires that we follow in the footsteps of those who use the dream as a guide to building this new reality. Externally, Israel still faces enemies that seek to destroy it and to terrorize it. Peace and security remain elusive, but we continue to hope, pray, and support efforts to find a resolution that will enable Israelis to live in peace and tranquility, either together or separately from the Palestinian community with whom we are intertwined. Internally, Israeli society faces challenges and conflicts that go across religious, ethnic, and economic divides. Israel has not been insulated from the challenges felt by all modern democratic states in the first quarter of the 21st century. So what is our role to be? Not just dreamers, but we have to be unique voices of moderation, reflecting the strengths of conservative Judaism. As conservative Jews, we must be examples of how tradition and modernity can become the expression of the Jewish dream for the rest of this century, and a paradigm for Israelis seeking to heal the rifts that are increasingly growing within our homeland. To fulfill our role in helping to make the ideal dream a reality and a source of healing for the Jewish people, it means that we need to become visible, indeed highly visible, in our support of Israel through traditional venues such as Federation and Israel Bonds and support of the Masorti movement. At the same time, we have to speak as B'nai Bait, as insiders, as members of the family, in words of critique where they are needed, words of correction where they are necessary. We have to continue doing some of what we do best. Advocacy here in the United States to our leaders, financial support that we give to the various branches of the Masorti movement, the conservative movement operating in Israel. This year, through our opportunity to vote in the elections to the World Zionist Congress that helps raise the voice of moderation within that body. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we must plan our next visit to Israel to see how the dream, even if it is moving slowly, is becoming a little more real. It is to show Israelis that we are both part of the dream and part of the healing and part of the process. In a few days, we will celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. May it inspire us to greater effort in the service of the state of Israel, its people, our brethren. May we go from dreamers to healers. Amen. Averim, let me invite you to please rise for Aleinu as we continue on page 56.